Hello, friends. It's the Cinemondo podcast again, and we're going to talk about One Piece.
We are new to One Piece. We've just started watching the anime, which is awesome. And we're going to do arc reviews. We decided the best way to do is to probably go review entire arcs. So now that we were in the middle of doing that when the live action came out, which we were kind of preparing for. So after we finish the live action reviews, we're going to go back to the arc because still loving the anime. So don't worry, we're going back. We're not leaving it.
So. But yeah, I'm just at the very beginning of the anime. I think I'm only on episode 7,000. So
yeah,
I still have a long way to go. But
so
the TV series, the Netflix live action series has really impressed me. Wow. I'm deep enough into the anime to where I have a feel for it and I understand it. I get it. And I really like it. It took a minute, when you start in that first episode, you're like, okay, this is a crazy screaming anime, that sort of shonen kind of style where giant screaming mouths and all that. And I'm like, but then you kind of get once you get the vibe of it, you get sucked into the stories, which are great. And the characters, which are really well drawn and not physically drawn, but created.
Yeah.
And the drawings are good too. But then when you get to the live action thing, it's like it brings it to life. It brings that crazy anime style to life in a way that totally works. And I don't know how they did it.
I remember when I first saw the first episode after being immersed in the anime, because I'm watching it nonstop. I was like, it seems really low key. Like it seems very, very calm. And then as you realize, you can't, we've talked about this before, trying to make anime into live action and have everyone screaming and running around would be super annoying. So they made it real. They made it a little more real and toned down. And I know that people were a little disappointed in certain scenes that they've left out or they combined or whatever, but I think it's worked in its favor for the most part. But I think that the cast has been so fantastic that they have totally pulled me in. I feel for these, they're like you're saying, well drawn, full rounded characters. I feel like I'm invested in their stories and their secrets. It's like I care about them. I love the way, they play off of each other, like how Zoro is so grouchy, but then he kind of has that little flicker of, a smile sometimes in his eye, he kind of knows he's just giving them shit. And how Nami is like, seems like she's super shady, but you're still rooting for her, even though she's betrayed them a few times now. You just don't know her motivation yet. Like everyone has their dream they're chasing, and you don't know what hers is. Everyone has one. That's kind of the point of this. But I think she's the one X factor so far.
Everybody, you're right. That whole thing of dreams, like, and promises. I made a promise, and my dream is to be, you have this big dream. There's something when you're younger about, what are you going to be when you grow up and all that. And I love that aspect of this show where it's, I've said this before about the show where I really feel like it is a depiction of that feeling of being a kid and playing make-believe in a fantasy world. Where maybe kids don't yet know all about the world and how, what else is out in the world, and maybe don't know a whole lot about geography or whatever. So to them, the world is completely unexplored unless you're some worldly jet-setting kid. But I mean, most kids when they're out, when they're young playing in the yard, they're like, let's go to that country which has got giant living trees that, and you just make stuff up. And that's what this show does. I think it has that feeling of like just making stuff up out of your mind and your own interpretation of what the world is, which is just childlike innocence, which a lot of these characters seem to have, this childlike innocence. And there's a moment in this episode that we're talking about now, episode 4. I think it's in this episode where Usopp, they're talking to Usopp about Kaya, Kaya is the girl that he tells all these wild stories to. She's sickly. She can't really leave her bedroom. And, she's like, oh, I've got the vapors or whatever. And you don't really know what's wrong with poor Kaya, but Usopp feels for her. They've been friends, it seems, for their whole lives. He tells her these wild, imaginative stories, and she's entertained by him, and it's her only sort of happy time. But then there's a scene later where they didn't do this in the anime, but they did it here. They kind of addressed it in a funny way. It was like, so is she your girlfriend?
Yeah.
And that just doesn't come up in the anime. The characters don't have any of that sort of sexual tension.
No.
They're kind of like kids in that way.
Yeah.
And Luffy especially. Luffy doesn't seem to see how cute Nami is or anything.
I don't know, but everyone else does. Like, she uses that to baffle pirates when she's trying to trick them. She'll be like, "Oh, I need to change clothes," or whatever, and they're all blah blah blah.
Yeah.
So it does exist, but not with our crew. Our crew,
but in that way,
Nami is to her.
Nami is kind of like a liaison between the child world and the adult world, because and maybe I've analyzed this a little bit too much, but my feeling is that girls mature faster than boys. They become more adult before the little boys do. So she is kind of like this worldly adult girl. It represents the kind of slightly older, slightly a little bit more sophisticated than Luffy. Luffy is a kid, basically, even though I don't know how old he is, but his persona is that of a child,
right?
And she
and
is
he also
and she's starting to look cute and sexy, so she's kind of like, I know how to work this.
Yeah, exactly. And she has her mysteries, which I think is intriguing, because she's doing all this stuff kind of behind their back, and she's kind of bailed on them a few times, including during the buggy thing, which was like, nice.
Yeah. She tries to run away, but yeah.
So
maybe she's up to something.
This episode is basically the second half of the plot line from episode 3, which is still taking place on Kaya's mansion, and trying to figure out what the secret. Yeah, in Syrup Village, right? The Syrup Village arc. So we're still, getting to know Usopp, and it starts off with Zoro being thrown in a well, and it looked deep. So you just assume he died, but I guess he didn't. So we know he didn't, because he watched the anime. But so while he's trying to get out of the well, we get a lot of flashbacks into his story, which I thought was really touching and sweet. I thought was really, you sort of start seeing why he's so adamant. I want, just like a kid too, I want to be the greatest swordsman in the world. Like, that's his big, and now you kind of see why. I know, it's like, I made a promise. And he got her sword because he promised that. That's the one reason he got her sword after she died. So he has a point to prove. So now you know why he has the 3 swords. Like, he always carries her sword with him, So I really enjoyed that
2
part
black
of
swords and 1 white sword.
That's right. And I really enjoyed that, because you don't know why he's so dour all the time, and you're sort of starting to see a little flashback on the, he's basically coming from a place of, tragedy and failed attempts at being the best, and so he's really he's got this real aggro desire to be the best, and so that's gonna haunt him for a while. So he's still trying to get out of this well. That's all we know.
He's driven because of this promise that he made to his friend, who they had an antagonistic relationship, because she's a girl and he was constantly getting beaten by a girl. And there is this great moment. It's, to me, I thought this is a really great, very interesting moment that kind of touches on some issues that are interesting for such a kid-like, childlike show, where she keeps beating him, the young, keeps beating young Zoro. And at one point he said, he's just really distraught about it. He says, I can never beat you. And she stops and she's like, yes, you will. I'm a girl. Girls can never be as good as boys. When you grow up, you're going to be stronger than me, and I'm still going to be a girl. And she just sort of has this defeatist attitude. And he hears that coming from her, and he realizes that he's not the only one that has these self-doubts and all that. And that's where they bond. I think that moment is so great because he, for the first time, he's like, wait a minute, don't say that. That's not true. Don't feel that way. You're defeating yourself. And then, while he's saying that, you're expecting that the character is thinking that himself. Like, don't say that. You're not a failure. So the two of them bond over that. I think that's a great little moment.
Yeah, and instead of trying to defeat each other, decide to train each other. They start, basically working out together and like training each other and all their tricks. And his main thing, he's way too emotional. It's the classic thing, like he's going after, he's going through with anger, and like, he's and she's always like super calm. She has the one sword. She just waits for him to launch himself at her, so he sees him coming a mile away. So that was, and he drops his elbow.
Drops his elbow.
I thought that was a really sweet insight into Zoro. So after that, I think they softened up his character that way, even though he doesn't overtly get softer. And I love how he's always saying, "Where can I get a drink?" He's like freaking alcoholic. So he's always looking for the latest drink, no matter where he is. You kind of feel for him. Like, even though he's still the grouch, you kind of see why. Now he's just kind of that funny grouch. So you don't really, now it kind of makes sense to me now.
He's the lovable curmudgeon in the.
He kind of is. Yeah, curmudgeon. And that's what he is.
he kind of, but he does. There's so many great little moments in this, but there's another great moment where he is. I don't know if I think it might be in the next episode. Maybe I should hold off on this.
Yeah, let's hold
on. There's great moments in where and there's an earlier episode where he does kind of smile, where he does sort of hint at this allegiance to Luffy. Like, he realizes that Luffy has got this spirit. I think it's when he's in buggies, tied up to the thing, and the guy on the unicycle is throwing knives at him, and he hears Luffy screaming in pain, and I think that's one of those great little turning point moments where he realizes this kid is a fighter. He's got spirit. Right. He's not giving up, and we need to fight. We need to stay together. And he probably saw in Luffy what he felt like in in his childhood when he was fighting and not giving up. And
well, what I love about Luffy is there's no obstacle for him to achieve what he wants, and that's sort of the childlike aspect. And it's also what I love is that optimism, like not telling yourself all these lies about how you're going to fail, not being all negative. Like, he's like, let's just do it. Is that what you want? Let's do it. Then do it. He's like that. Like, don't bog yourself down in the negative, like excuses that stops people from pursuing their dreams. I thought that's what I love about his character the most. I think is even though he's blindly optimistic, people need that sometimes. It's like, how are you going to be a pirate? You don't have a ship. We'll get one.
Right. Well, I'll go ask for one.
It's nothing's a problem. And that is actually a really important lesson for most things. It's like, you got to at least try.
It's not necessarily a realistic or healthy approach to real life or adulthood, but it's inspiring because, I mean, you do have to know your limitations. It's like, but I think people are like, everything is possible. Anything is possible. And it's like, at this point in my life, could I become the greatest ballet dancer of all time? I don't think so. So
you could at least try, though.
I know, but that was what I was about to say. It's like, if you feel strongly enough that you really want to be the world's greatest ballet dancer, at your age, whatever. I'm a little bit more than 17, so I think it's a bit late for me to try it to start. But if that was my dream, first of all, delusional, but second of all, like you said, why not try? Take some lessons, get the feeling of it.
People say, I can't. I'm like, why can't you? Like, whether it's move or get out of a certain relationship, or it's like, I can't.
Those things.
Like, you can. So, but that's sort of what I feel like Luffy hears all the time is, we can't do that. We can't do it. He goes, yes, we can. So I don't know. I really appreciate that because I think we don't have enough of that in the world. So it's been nice. So,
but also knowing your limitations and
now you're just being all negative. You're going totally against Luffy's worldview.
But the thing is, he knows his limitations, and he doesn't really. I think I don't know what is happening in the series is that he learns that. That's something that he learned, because there's a couple of scenes, coming up where he. We won't go into it here, but where I feel like you see it on his face where he's like, that was too much for me. I couldn't do it. And he sees Zoro at one point, and he doesn't know what to do about it. He doesn't know how to react to Zoro being almost killed. There's certain things that sort of hint at those moments where that childlike optimism is confronted by the realities of young adulthood, and they kind of go, oh crap, maybe we should back off a little bit. So I think that's another thing that's great about the stories and the shows. It's not just saying blindly jump into unrealistic dreams, but you have to consider what you're capable of, what you've trained yourself to be able to encounter and defeat. You know what I mean?
I don't know. I see it differently, but that's okay. There's something for everyone. So now we're getting to the point where Usopp is like doing his usual, like the drivers are. So he's running around trying to find help because they're trying. The mansion it's starting to come. The shit's going down.
Right.
So he encounters Kobe. Unbeknownst to Usopp, this was not a good idea to take Toby to the Marines to the mansion. wasn't ideal.
Well, Kobe believes him. He's like, he hears Usopp. Nobody believes poor Usopp. He's the Aesop fables telling stories. Usopp is he's ruined his reputation as far as who believes him or not in the town, and he's just distraught. He's like, nobody believes me. And then the camera pulls back and we see Kobe there, and he goes, I believe you.
Yeah. So I love that. It was cute.
Yeah.
Because it was cute, but also wrong. Right. We believed him, but for not the right reasons.
Right.
So then we're getting into, we're starting to become clear on the poisoning of Kaya, and that she's been eating this soup that was supposed to be good for her. And
even though it's blue,
it's blue and terrible looking. And even though Luffy doesn't know it, he ends up drinking a batch that's sitting on the stove that they've been cooking up, and he drinks the whole thing, and you're like, oh shit.
Yeah.
And so he passes out.
Poison, I guess. I think the poison was meant to just keep her sick. So it's not like a deadly poison, is it? Sort of like a sustain her weakness kind of a poison.
I think she'd eventually, like arsenic, she'd eventually succumb if she gets enough of it.
Because he needed her to be alive until
just for that age.
Mahador needed to keep her alive until that night when she turns. That when she becomes the right age to inherit everything, which he then has worked out some weird way of inheriting it from her upon her death, which he has planned to do with some kind of bladed weapon configuration.
Well, remember, that's what Mary was trying to sort out, is like, why is she leaving you, the shipyard? This makes no sense.
Doesn't make sense. Why?
I know. And then she thought, well, because he's good with business or something. That's what she thought, and that's what he convinced her of. But I like that.
Such a good. When my parents took him in, he's become a part of the family.
And so then, if she dies suddenly, it wouldn't be that unusual because everybody knows she's been sick for a while, so no one would probably suspect anything. Like, oh, she died. Oh well, I guess just in time for you to inherit the shipyard. So, I know, it's so sad. But now the truth is coming out. So that was kind of the nice part, is that, oh, thank God they figured this out, because oh my God. So so Luffy's passed out, he can't be any help, and yet the black cats are starting to start their shenanigans. Kuro's finally like, veil is off, he's finally going for it. He's like, where are you? And
so they lock down the house. The whole house is shuttered and locked down. They're trying to figure out a way to undo the shutters so they can escape. But then the Marines show up and confront Klahadore, who is now known to be the evil pirate.
Bad news.
And so he's trying to keep the Marines out, but then he hands over Luffy to them, who is now unconscious, and he says, what does he tell them? He tells them that he's ate too much or something. He drank too much.
Yeah, he's drunk. Which is hilarious because he drinks milk, which is so weird. Another kid thing.
Yeah.
Another kid thing.
But this episode gives us all that stuff, and plus there's an amazing. The fight scenes in this show are amazing. Usually fight scenes are a little bit of a yawn for me sometimes if they're just typical fighting or whatever, and they seem sort of like in a lot of the Marvel shows, it seems like, okay, they have to put a fight in every episode, and how are you going to do that in a way that makes it seem kind of new and exciting? And it sometimes just seems like these back and forth comic book style fights. But in this show, it's really, you really have a sense of the fight choreography being really, really nicely done and interesting. The locations where they have the fights are interesting, and the weapons that they're using. I mean, one of the cat pirates here, she's got like a knife and a broom, and those are her weapons. And then the other guy, I think,
she
has
hisses like
two.
a cat. She's like,
Yeah, she's always hissing, and
it's funny. It's
and
very cute.
Clahador's cat-like claws. You know, he's got these knife fingers, kind of like Freddy Krueger kind of things.
The actor does a good job of being graceful with them, because that has to be hard to work with. But he does this really good job of, like, you know, being able to make it look like he's very at home with them while he's crossing them over and kind
And
of
you
just
find out
moving
why he
them.
puts his glasses like
Yeah, I
this.
love
He's
that.
got these
That was a
blades.
cool touch. I'm glad they kept that. That was a cool
Yeah.
touch. That was really fun. So there are a few things in this that I really like, because one thing I loved about the anime is the music. The intro song I love. I just love that song. It's in my head all the time. And I've been disappointed that this has not been part of the show. Like, I wanted that to be part of it. But this, I think, from what I can remember, because I'm looking for it, this is the first time we get a hint of the song. When they finally get the ship. They get their ship and their ship. And that song, I was like, I just got goosebumps. It was such a beautiful moment. And they do this big orchestral version of it. It's so gorgeous. And I just love that. Was like a highlight for me, even though it was
That
very
was a great
small.
moment to
I
save
loved it.
it
It's like,
until
it's
that, you
here.
know?
Yeah, it's like now it's for real. You know, I just love that. So that was very
But yeah, I
cute.
love that. I love that too. I love when you see the boat coming out there and you hear that familiar song and you're like, oh, that
just touched my heart.
was
Oh
such a
my God.
great choice to hold
I
it back,
loved
you
it.
know, to hold back on the music. And then like you said, the music comes in and you realize, okay, now we're on our way.
We're in it. Yeah,
We're
we
on
got the
our
ship.
way.
We
The
got
trumpets
our crew.
behind.
Oh, so good.
We are.
Loved it. And then apparently we got a big spoiler at the end that everybody has been talking about, not spoiler, but a big plot revelation that everyone said comes way later, but they've decided to drop it sooner, which makes sense because the show is so condensed, you know?
Yeah.
And everybody's like, please don't watch it. I'm like, yeah, but we can't not watch it. We want to watch
Well,
it.
they had to rearrange stuff for the live action thing. You couldn't seriously couldn't make an episode for each episode of the anime. You had to condense, you had to put, you know, leave things out, you had to add things. You had to create whole new things to happen to tie the stories together in a live action way. And I think they did an amazing job of that. And it sounds like, I mean, from what I'm reading on the interwebs, it seems like the hardcore One Piece fan base is accepting it and they like it. They're like, yeah, it works, you know?
It's clearly made with love. It's made with the, you know, the creator's blessing. It's like they've done such a classy, they don't cut corners. Everything's really lushly done and produced. It's gorgeous. Everything looks real world. They don't make it look cartoony or CGI. It looks very well done. I can't imagine a better adaptation of an animated, you know, project that was this profoundly, you know, affecting and good. And it's so good.
But it has a look. It's not CGI look, but it does have a stylized look to it that's
kind
a
of
little bit pushed from reality, which I really love.
Yeah. It just
It's
has a Harry
nicely
Potter. It's dark. It's kind of darker fantasy, you know, just really, but beautiful. And the open seas look great. And apparently they shoot this in South Africa, I think I read. So it has a lot of great outdoor locations, which you also don't see much in fantasy like this. Like, I like that they have these big epic, you know, landscapes, and you just don't see that very often unless they're CGI.
Daylight,
So it's
right?
pretty cool.
Daylight.
Yeah. Daylight outside, blue skies, you know, so very, very well done.
Yeah, and one thing that you said about being detailed, it is filled with beautiful details and little touches that they didn't have to do. But one thing that I like that is a constant through it, it seems, is they always do. In the anime, there was a lot of stuff with the wanted poster, and that is something that's very important to the story. It comes up later with Luffy, but every pirate seems to have a wanted poster. And I love the fact when they introduce a new character, that wanted poster seems to just blow in from you know, somewhere, and it goes in front of them, and they always push it out of the way somehow. They use their weapon of choice. Like Clahador slices it with his blades, and Buggy grabs it and wads it up, and I love that is not easy to do. you know,
Right.
in the show. They didn't have to do it that way. But it's such a great little device
And
to
I've
introduce
started kinda clocking
characters.
the bounties, like, it makes you feel like that's
Yes.
how dangerous that person is by the level of their bounty. So,
Right.
I'm kinda liking that too. It's pretty funny.
Yeah, like,
But
"What's
what's the
your
big
bounty?"
revelation? What did they tell us at the end of this episode that was so
Yeah.
important?
No, well, we have a character named Garp who's like this sort of
The
intimidating.
dog hat. Okay.
So Garp is this intimidating guy who goes to inspect the troops wearing this little dog hat with the little furry ears, and it's so funny that they did that. Sort of, you know, takes away his scariness, but he's
Yeah,
this scary guy who's been looking for Luffy. He's tracking
yeah,
Luffy down. He seems to sense that Luffy is a major threat or something,
yeah,
and he knows that Kobe is a
yeah,
is an old friend of Luffy's,
yeah.
and so he seems to be using Kobe to get to Luffy because he's kind of favoring Kobe.
Mhm.
He's including him, you know, and all this stuff, like playing games with him
Yeah,
like sort of kind of starting to train him to be a good
yeah.
Marine, and kind of pressing him for information about Luffy. So
Mhm.
finally, you know, after all this stuff, at the end of this episode, they when they've finished on Syrup Village and they've somewhat defeated Klahadore,
Yeah.
but then you see him rowing away, so
Why
he's
do
not
they do
dead.
that? Why do they keep, like, almost killing people and letting them go? Because they always come back to get you. That
It's a
keeps
kid
happening.
show. Yes.
Ah,
I guess when people get killed, I mean, they do have a lot of killing in the
yeah,
show, and it's strange because there is an ideal that we keep hearing in the show that, you know, from Luffy particularly, that, you know, you don't have
mhm,
to, like, he learned it from, you
yeah,
know, Shanks, that you don't have to solve everything with violence, and yet,
yeah,
unfortunately, violence seems to be the only way to defeat these horrible pirates, but,
yeah, but they
um
always leave a loose end. Like, even if it was like the
yeah,
black cat dumped Zoro into the well, he wasn't even dead yet, and then, of course, he comes
right.
back and then talk but anyway, that's just part of what's written in. It's baked into the show. So I'm
Right,
not gonna
and it
kill off
kind
all
of
the main
adds
characters.
another sort of
It
childlike
does.
aspect to it in a way.
It does.
But at the end of this episode, they have defeated Klahadore and the cat pirates and all
Mhm.
that stuff, and they won, and you know, Kaya has very generously given them. She's like, you know, I'm super super wealthy, but
Yeah.
what is a better thing to do with wealth than to give it to people and to make people
And she doesn't
happy? And
wanna run a shipyard. It's not her
yeah, she
interest. She
doesn't.
wants to be a doctor.
She wants to be a
So,
doctor.
she's gonna be
That's her
and she's been
dream.
sick for so long, she's probably learned a lot about health during that time.
Where she understands the importance of health and good to being
That's
strong,
right.
and that she wants to bring that to other people because she was denied it for so long. There's so many little details like that, but at the end of the episode, they've won and they got their ship, and it's got the goat's head on the front, and they name it after the poor financial
Mary.
advisor, Kaya's
Yeah, the
financial
sheep.
advisor, Mary,
So
and
sad.
they name their ship after him, and they take
They're
off
very cute.
into the great blue yonder, and everything is great, but then all of a
Mhm.
sudden they're under attack again, and he looks through the telescope and he sees Garp. Finally, they're almost face to
Oh,
face,
yeah.
and he sees Garp, and what does he say?
"Grandpa?" And I like everybody's reaction like, "Huh?" And they do these panels. Brr,
Right.
everybody's like, "What?" And I wonder if that's right out of the, manga because some of
Could
these I
be. It
feel like
looks
when they
very
did
manga.
the cuts, the screen, the cut screens or whatever, you're just,
Yeah.
"Oh, I wonder if
The
that's"
split screen with the,
Yeah, the split screen.
like, panel lines between them.
Exactly, I just wonder, that was very cute though, I love that. So then,
And
end of
Zoro's like,
episode,
"Did you say grandpa?"
big cliffhanger.
Yeah.
What? So that was very fun. So another
Yeah.
solid episode. I was glad to see they tied up the loose ends with Kaya, and then she gave was it Usopp his kiss, which was very sweet. And then of course
Yeah.
Luffy's like, "Wait, I'm the captain." Like he got jealous, but it didn't seem like he really wanted the kiss. He just wanted the attention. Like it didn't seem like he was really jealous. He just like, "I'm the
Yeah.
captain," and they're all, "Shut up, all right."
But then Luffy's pretty generous with things like that. He doesn't, if somebody's having a good time telling a story, he's like, "Yeah, you were great. You were great, Captain Usopp."
Exactly, captain.
Yeah. The great Captain Usopp.
That's right. Their beautiful ship. And Usopp made a flat, a banner for the ship, which looked just like him, which was hilarious.
Right.
It's really funny. But anyway, so yeah, we're now, it feels like we're really getting, solidified into the world of the pirate crew, and everybody seems on board and everybody's being really cool. And then we find out that Luffy's been keeping a big secret, which is very interesting. Yeah.
And it's like, your grandpa's the head of the Marines. Could have told us.
Stay tuned. I know, exactly. That's a secret we should have known. So we're gonna do a review of this episode 5. So come along with us on that. And we'll see you there.
Yeah. Thanks for joining us.
Bye.
Bye.